Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with a couple of Tavors. Well, I guess I should say a Tavor and an X95. The new X95s are now on the market. We have them at Copper Custom, Atlantic Firearms, and a few other stores around the country, or are already starting to receive their shipments. In my hands, I have my original Tavor. This is a rifle I bought from Atlantic Firearms a couple of years ago, before I was a dealer myself. And this has been my go-to rifle. This is a rifle I reach for first when I head out of town or whatever. Anytime I need a rifle, this is a rifle that kind of won me over and kind of started me on the bullpup path. I've always liked bullpups, but I've always preferred rifles like the AK-47 over them. This was the first rifle to change my opinion. I don't think before the Tavor came along I'd ever consider adopting an AUG or an FS2000 as my go-to rifle. Again, the Tavor changed that. As a matter of fact, this changed the landscape of the bullpup market in the United States. It pretty much killed the FS2000. They're not even importing them anymore, and the AUG's sales are just trickling out. I mean, it's really put the kibosh on the AUG sales. So the Tavor has really kind of brought the American gun buying public around to the whole concept of the bullpup. I think they have over 50,000 of these now out in circulation that they've sold over the course of the last couple of years. Now, when we got the Tavor here on the US market, the Israelis, the IDF, had already gone over to what's called the X95, or some people call it the Micro Tavor. This rifle that I'm holding here was developed around 2000. So by the time we got them here in the United States, the Israelis had been using it for several years, over a decade, right? So the X95 was already in military service over in Israel when we finally got the Tavor. Well, that's all changed. Now we have access to the X95. They had to make a few tweaks to it because the original had just a little over a 13-inch barrel, was a much shorter package. Because of stupid US laws, it has to meet an overall length requirement, and it also needs a 16-inch barrel to be legal without having to file it on the NFA as a short-barreled rifle. So, anyway, what I want to show you guys today is just a first shots video. The X95 sitting over there just out of frame. I'll show it to you here in a second. I want to show you some of the key differences between the X95 and the original Tavor, and just see how the gun shoots right out of the box. We'll do more videos with the rifle coming up. Again, this is just a first shots video. Now, this is my go-to rifle. This is how I have it set up for my own use. I have an L-can, which is a 1:4 adjustable magnification sight, which also has an illuminator reticle. One of the things they changed on the X95 I really like, right now I have this set up with a flashlight, but as you can see I really have to reach up there to hit it. It's one of those things that the Tavor was really hard to do, and that is mount a flashlight to it. You could change the handguard, which I didn't like any of the handguards out there. I preferred the OEM handguard, so this is where I had to run a light, but we'll show you how that's been improved. And on the end I have a Griffin Armament M4 SD2 suppressor. I want to fire it suppressed. Right now I have some Wolf Gold, which is 55 grain Taiwanese M193 ball. I got this stuff from my friends over at Lucky Gunner. So we'll shoot this, and then we'll take a look at that X95. All right, guys, here it is, the X95. We just got these in at Copper Custom. We got black and flat dark earth. Of course, I chose the flat dark earth to keep as my own. You'll notice some key differences. We'll go over those here in a few minutes. What I want to do is shoot this thing. I wouldn't even let my cameraman shoot it. This is unfired. Just took it out of the box. First 20 rounds with the US GI magazine. It's that Wolf Gold ammunition from Lucky Gunner. I'll stick it in the rifle here. You'll notice the charging handle is further back. You also notice where my flashlight is. I'm going to go ahead and charge it. It just feels smaller even though it's the same size. Flip it to fire, and here we go. This is the first X95 in the wild, I believe. Actually making it out onto YouTube. They've shown up elsewhere at trade shows and Big 3 and places like that. But this is the production gun out in the wild, and I should shut up and pull the trigger. All right, here we go. Wow. All right, well, first impressions from the first 20 rounds out of the gun. First of all, it feels smaller even though it's not. It feels lighter and handier, which I don't know how that's possible. Again, the gun's the same overall length. Matter of fact, they even had to make the barrel 16.5 inches in length to make overall length requirements. And you'll also notice here, notice how thick this butt pad is. Okay, the original X95, the thickness was about as thick as that black line right there. All right, so they had to lengthen the butt pad, again, to meet those goofy law requirements to make the gun a certain length. Recoil, very much like the Tavor, has a standard A2 bird cage on the end of it. I'm using this Mepro light. This is the True Dot on here, which is an Israeli-made sight, very similar to the M5 sight that the Israelis use in the military. It has a few features taken off of it, but it's basically the same sight. And these are available for, I think, $399 from Optics Planet's where I got it. I think it looks really sharp on the gun, but the trigger is what really got me. They've improved the trigger pull considerably. I'll have to go back and measure it, but I would say it's half the pull weight of the original Tavor's trigger. If you remember, the first Tavors to hit the market, they had really heavy trigger pulls on them, 10 pounds, maybe a little bit more. They were really, really heavy trigger pulls. A lot of people complained about them, and that's why Geissele and other companies started making lighter weight triggers for them. This thing has a really nice light trigger right out of the box. And I remember IWI telling me at Big 3 that they were working on new triggers, and I actually got to play with some of the early prototypes. So it's nice to see it in the gun. Yeah, so let's also talk about that flashlight. So you'll notice where I had the flashlight mounted on my original Tavor. I had to mount it over here, up and out of the way, and I had to try to hit it with my index finger. If you have really short fingers, it's really hard to do. Now I have my Enforce light right there, where I can just stick my thumb up there and hit the button and turn the light on, and then turn it off, make sure it's off. And that's because the X95 has integrated rail systems. These little panels here on the side, push a button, and the panel just slides off, and you'll see 1913 rails underneath. This is all the way around. You have the same panels here on the bottom. Again, 1913 rails underneath. So you can put pretty much whatever you want on the gun. You don't have to go through to an aftermarket rail system like you did with the original Tavor. All right, plenty of other changes. Let's set it side by side to the original Tavor and kind of go over what those key changes are between this and the original rifle. Let's touch upon some of the key differences between the original Tavor and that new X95. So down here at the bottom, we have the original Tavor. As you can see, the guns are roughly the same size. Let me go ahead and get the suppressor off if I can do so without burning myself. That thing is hot. Okay, suppressor off. So as you can see, the guns and overall length are pretty much identical. If I lay them on top of each other, you can see that they're the same size. So there's really no size difference between the two overall. Let's start at the rear. Now I do have a Manticore Arms butt plate on my Tavor, but the original thickness of the butt pad is about like this on the original Tavor. I like the contour of this, and that's why I put it on my rifle. You'll notice the butt pad on the X95 is really thick, and again, that's to meet the overall length requirements of 26 inches under stupid US laws. The original would have, again, had that butt pad that was just a hard piece of plastic and kind of squared off on the end to make it shorter. And that's what the Israelis were going for, was a much shorter, handier rifle for CQB, again with a 13-inch barrel. Moving forward, you'll notice that the contours of the original Tavor, in my opinion, actually look better. I kind of like the way the rear of the gun looks here. The X95 just looks squared off. Okay, so some of you guys might not like the way it looks, but honestly, I don't care the way it looks. I'm more concerned with function. Functionally, this rifle's smaller. Feeling and handier feeling for whatever reason. I haven't figured out what those reasons are yet, but I can definitely say that it feels different, the way it balances out over the Tavor. But you'll notice it's more squared off. Here you'll have the hump on the Tavor that comes down and protects the bolt release, which is right here. On the X95, you'll see that the bolt release just sticks down from a flat surface, okay? QDs on both of them are right here in the same spot. Moving forward, you'll notice the ejection ports and stuff look very similar. The exact same ejection port buffers. Now, the left-hand bolts and the bolt itself is identical between the two rifles, so you can use the same components in both guns. The magazine well looks pretty much the same. Of course, moving forward from that, on the Tavor, we have the original trigger release here for the magazine, which you'd have to push, which a lot of people showed concerns over. On the X95, you'll notice that no such trigger exists. That's because up here is the magazine release in what many would consider to be an AR-15 type location. Now, in my opinion, it's not in exactly the same spot as the AR-15. You'll notice how close it is to the trigger. It's pretty much right next to the trigger. The AR-15 will be a little bit further forward, and it's fenced, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But coming back to this area of the X95, the distance between the front of the magazine well and the back of the pistol grip has been shortened. Okay, so if we didn't have that super long butt pad on here, the overall length, the reach of the gun would be considerably shorter than it is on the Tavor. If you look at the Tavor, the magazine's back here and the magazine's up here on the X95. So they've moved that forward just a little bit. Okay, they've closed this gap here on the X95 a little bit. Again, I believe in an effort to shorten the overall length of the gun, or the feel of the gun. The Tavor has a molded in pistol grip. The new X95 has a slightly different pistol grip. It's more vertical versus sloping backwards. The Tavor's comes back at an angle. This one's more vertical, more up and down, kind of tapers to a smaller point here at the bottom, but it's also modular. So this grip can be swapped out. We have the original Styrogue / original Tavor style trigger guard here, which covers the entire hand. You can replace this system with just a simple trigger guard. That will be an option that's available later, and it's one I'll probably wind up putting on this gun. I like the way it looks. So there'll be options down the road for that. We've already talked about the magazine release being here, and it's also ambidextrous, so you'll find it on both sides of the gun. And then it has the same selector lever as the original Tavor. You'll find that it has the same backup sights as the original Tavor that just fold down into the 1913 rail. And then let's talk about those charging handles. So I'm going to roll the Tavor over here really quick. Now you'll notice the Tavor's charging handle's in the forward position here, much like where you would find an H&K style charging handle, very far forward. They've moved that back here on the X95, so it's pretty much right above the trigger. It's more close to the shooter's face, okay? So a lot of people are going to like that because it gives you options that we didn't have before with the original rifle. That being primarily the access to a rail over here, that if we put the rail, you'll notice over here on the other side of the Tavor, it's kind of at an angle and it's up high. And so when you move the charging handle back and forth, which you can do on the X95 as well, you lose the rail over here on this side of the gun because that's where the charging handle rides. As a matter of fact, that rail pops into this charging handle slot. So on the X95, we no longer have that. It's moved rearward, gives us rail space up here, which gives us a flashlight. This is something I really wanted on my Tavor, a flashlight, and this solves that problem. Okay, now speaking of that, something we already touched upon a little bit, the Tavor does not have this, and that is the ability to slide these rail sections off. And you notice it has a hand stop here. Slide these rail sections off, and now you can put whatever vertical forend grips on there, AFGs, whatever it is you want. You can mount lights and lasers all around the forend, and it looks very narrow without those covers on it. Okay, so I think that's definitely an improvement. I like this a lot over the original Tavor. Now, as I mentioned, you can see the slot here, so I can move the charging handle either left or right. Use the same charging handle. Again, the gun is convertible to left or right operation, just like the original Tavor, by putting a left-hand bolt in it, and it disassembles much the same way. So that's pretty much it. I think we've covered it off on all the key differences between this and the original Tavor. It still has, you know, the same barrel system, same bird cage on it with the jam nut, easily suppressible. As you can tell, I've been suppressing my Tavor for quite some time. They did change the location of the sling swivels, so you have the original one back here in the same spot as the original Tavor. You have a new one here, and this one though rotates. When the original Tavor was locked, it has quarter-turn notches in it, but the entire swivel rotates, and that seems to be consistent across all the guns. I checked all the guns that we got in at Copper, and they all had that mount rotating. Up here in the front, you have a QD mount as well, which actually comes through the cover of the rail system, so you can mount it there. Downside is that if you put a flashlight on there like I have, I've covered that. And we'll talk about how I sling this rifle right now. It's still very slingable. You'll notice I've been trying this QD mount system here I've put on the forward pick rail, but I've also been using this one. I think I actually like the rear mount better, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes with my Savvy Sniper Sling. All right, let's do a little bit more shooting. Let's take a look inside of the two guns.
I love this rifle. This is really nice. And I finally got to shoot it.
So let's really quickly take apart the X95 and look inside it and see how it compares to the original Tavor. This is the first time I've taken the X95 apart. This is not a full review video, guys. I don't even really like doing review videos. I just like to do range videos and bring you out to the range and shoot guns that I have, like, and own. So anyway, this is the first time I've taken it apart. You guys saw the first rounds fired out of it. Now you're going to see me take it apart for the first time. Using the tip of a bullet, push the cross pin out, and I'm guessing everything's going to be very similar to the original Tavor. And it is so far. Bolt and carrier. Looks very similar. I don't see any glaring differences whatsoever. The trigger pack. Now, the first generation Tavors, like I have a slightly different trigger pack than the X95 and the current generation of Tavors. So IWI US, I believe, and I want to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure the IWI US made a change to the trigger packs so that the X95 and the new current generation Tavors both use the same trigger pack. So here's that new trigger pack, and you can see, you know, looks pretty much the same as the original. Only difference is the trigger pull is a lot nicer, okay? And it goes in and out just like the original Tavor. So that's it. That's basically how you field strip the gun. And so let's go ahead and take apart the original Tavor and see how those parts look by comparison. Again, just pop out this rear pin. I'm using the tip of a bullet to do it. Captive pins. Pull the bolt carrier out. So there you go, guys. That looks the same to me. So let's go ahead and see what happens. Put the trigger back in here. Let's take the Tavor's bolt and carrier, stick it in the gun. It's the same. So, I heard it was. That's the first time I actually proved that it was. So there you go. All right. So it looks like the trigger components, the bolt components are interchangeable between the guns. Most of the changes are going to be ergonomic and what's forward. Now the 9mm conversion kits and things like that for the Tavor, I'm pretty sure do not work with the X95, but I'll have to confirm that. Let's take the trigger pack out. Now I will not be able to use the trigger pack out of my Tavor and my X95 because this is one of the very first Tavors to go onto the US market, and they have since slightly changed the trigger pack, and I'm also running a Geissele Super Sabra trigger. Now I will say the Geissele is still better than the improved Tavor trigger. This thing is an exceptionally good trigger. And with you put the trigger bow in it, this thing becomes literally a match grade trigger in a Tavor. So I still highly recommend those triggers, and the new Geissele Super Sabras will work in the X95. I talked to them before filming this video, and they said, yes, that is in fact true. So let's go ahead and put them back together again really quick. I just thought that was interesting to see how similar or dissimilar. I guess you got to have that pin out to do that. These two were, and it looks like they're pretty much the same, which is good news. So that means left-hand conversion kits and things like that for the X95 that are already out there in circulation will work, or for the Tavor, will work for the X95. So at Copper Custom, if we have some left-hand bolts, even though they aren't currently shipping left-hand X95s, if we have some left-hand bolts or we can get our hands on some, we can convert some of them for you guys, for you lefties out there. All right, so that's it. So far, I'm really liking the new X95. It's pretty cool. All right, so really quickly, guys, I want to show you how I sling the new X95. This is my Savvy Sniper Sling. This is what I use on my Tavor and pretty much every other rifle I have. We do have them at Copper Custom. These are by far the best slings I've ever seen and the only sling that we sell. All right, so I put the sling on the outside of the Tavor like that, and I'll show you why here in a second. So what I'm doing is I'm running it on this rear stud here And I found that I think I like that better. Now I gotta do a lot more shooting with this thing, obviously. But this is how the rifle would carry with the Savvy Sniper the way that I run it. Now the reason I carry it with the sling back here is you'll notice it's keeping the gun close to my body. It's not hanging out, so when I'm moving around, the gun isn't flopping out away from my body. It keeps it nice and tight. Some of you guys may like it on the other side of the gun. Just quickly go to the other side. Now the gun hangs in a slightly different position, but it still works. Now the big issue here is where this sling is. It still works for me. If I put the slack into the Savvy Sniper, I can shoot it like I normally would, and I can still transition over to the other shoulder if I need to with the sling right here. Now, with a flashlight, you're not going to be able to use that front QD mount, right? But if you're not running a flashlight, no worries. For me, I was playing with this. I put a front QD there just to see how I like it. I don't like it, and here's the reason. Notice where the sling is in relationship to the charging handle. It's getting in the way, okay? So I'm not gonna run my sling up there. I'll be taking this off. I'm gonna go ahead and run it with the sling back here because it definitely works better. The only thing that's a little bit weird is the fact that this twists. I would prefer that it didn't because as you take the gun off and on, you know, you can get your sling twisted up in knots. It does have the quarter turn capabilities or locking capabilities, but just for whatever reason it just seems to swivel a little bit. But that's a minor inconvenience for the way the gun carries. Very nicely carries in the front of your chest, and with the Savvy Sniper, if you're so inclined, you can run it as a single point too. I don't want to hit my microphone because it makes awful noises, and you guys don't like that, nor do I in editing. So anyway, that's how I run it with the sling on the rifle. Let's do some shooting, but also let's do a quick magazine test. Now, the magazines that this works with really shouldn't be any different than the magazines the original Tavor worked with, but we've had some new magazines pop up on the market that I also want to include, including the D60, which is the Magpul 60 round drum. All right, so I got a little bag full of magazines here. I'll just grab them out in random order. Here we have the first one I grabbed, which is the Lancer. And we just have 20 rounds loaded into each magazine except for the D60. So the bolt's locked to the rear. Here's your bolt release. Push that, it chambers around. And let's see how she runs these. All right, now to release the magazine, notice where my index finger is. I have really long fingers. I can't push the magazine with my knuckle, so I have to hook my finger back and drop the magazine out, but the magazines do fall free. So I kind of have to break my grip to hit the magazine release because my fingers are so long. But even some of the guys with shorter fingers still have an issue with this fencing right here. You can't, their fingers are still gonna fall right here, so they're still having to pull their fingers back to hit it. So I've become really accustomed to the magazine release on the original Tavor and actually like it and prefer it. But I can get used to this. That's not that big of a deal. Most people in the AR-15 world, that was their biggest complaint, and they're really gonna like that feature, even though it's just a little bit off from where the AR-15's release is. All right, there's 60 rounds in that. Yeah, what the heck, let's see if it works. Here's a Surefire 60. You'll notice, if you wanna put a lot of rounds in a bullpup, this is gonna be your best option, okay? That's just because it stays out of the way, and I'll show you why here in a few seconds with the drum. But let's go ahead and chamber around. Now, if this thing screws up, it's more than likely the issue of the magazine. I don't have real good luck with Surefire 60s. But let's see what it does. Wow. Well, we have the Tavor, well, not the Tavor, the X95 smoking. 60 round magazine will do it. Now keep in mind, guys, I literally took this thing out of the box. Most of you are going to take it apart, inspect it, and oil it up. I'm not. And a lot of you guys give me a hard time. Not a lot, just a few of you guys say, oh, that's irresponsible, Mac. You should just show proper maintenance of guns. Dudes, that's not what I do. I abuse things. I want to see how they work in extreme conditions. So, does this thing seem to work right now, right out of the box? Absolutely. Surefire didn't drop free. All right. Second generation PMag. It does not have the over insertion stop here on the rear of it. Stick it in the gun. Locks in just fine. Chamber around. All right, locks open just fine. No problems with function. Go ahead and hit the button. All right, so that PMag's not dropping free. It's sticking a little bit. Have to strip it out. Let's see. Third gen PMag. This one has the over insertion shelf. This will keep it from working on some guns, like the ARX and some other guns. Stick it in. Seems to lock in okay. Chamber around. And it locks open. Let's see if it drops free. Gonna have to strip it out. Seems like the USGI's drop free just fine. And this is a hex mag. Okay, 20 rounds. Locks in. All right, see if the hex mag drops. Nope. Gonna have to strip it. That one's tighter than most. That one I really have to pull on. And last up of the magazines we brought out, the good old Magpul D60. I love these drums. These are really cool. Now, locks in just fine. I couldn't pull that off with the X Products drums. They wouldn't lock in or feed. So let's try it, see how it works. Chambers around. All right. Now notice where this drum is in relation to the pistol grip. I can't get my hand on it. My wrist is hitting the drum. Okay. So that's the problem with drums on bullpups. A Beta C mag would be impossible. You'd have to hold it and shoot it like this, all right? So if you're gonna go high capacity on a bullpup, you're probably gonna be better off with a Surefire 60 if you have one that works. And it locks open, which is another nice feature of the Magpul magazine. I'm really liking this D60, guys. This is one solid drum so far. I've dropped it, while it was loaded, I've beat it around, and it's been... Can I shake it out? Yes, I can. So you'll want to pull that one out too. The USGIs, let's walk over here and grab one here really quick. I want to make sure I'm not lying to you guys. Now this thing's handling the heat really well. All right, I'm feeling no heat on the handguards whatsoever. I should have brought a thermal out, but no heat buildup at all after all those rounds fired back to back. But let's see, the USGI's dropped straight out of the gun, and that's what the gun was designed to work with. So, yeah, surprisingly good heat management, 100% function. Guys, I'm really liking the X95 so far. We're gonna put a lot more rounds through it. Well, guys, we're going to wind things up. Yes, it's snowing again. Sunshine, snow, rain, cold. I can't see my breath right now, but we saw our breath earlier this afternoon. The weather's just crazy right now in the spring here in Indiana. I hope you enjoyed coming out and taking a look at the X95, which is brand new, just now shipping from IWI. This is one of those guns that I've always been excited to get my hands on. I did have the chance to shoot these a few years ago in Israel, the full auto versions and the properly configured ones with the short barrels and the shortened stocks. But I'm still glad to see the civilian legal version of this thing hit the United States market. Price on these things is $17.49. That's pretty much what everybody's selling them for. Copper Custom has them for $17.49, Atlantic Firearms and other places as well. So the price is pretty much the same as the original Tavor. If you guys have been waiting for the X95, it's here now. And if you guys are looking to add another one to the collection, guys, I am not going to get rid of my original Tavor. I still like it, but I'll be honest with you, this X95 so far, first range session, keep that in mind, is really impressing me. I like it quite a bit, but we got a lot more shooting to do, and you'll see this gun throughout the year. I'll keep you guys posted on how it's doing. If you guys have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, of course you can ask those questions right down below. I stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer those questions. And if you guys would like to support the Military Arms channel, you can shop at Copper Custom. It's our online store. And also, if you haven't already, please check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all the web's best firearms content creators out there and brought them under one friendly, Second Amendment friendly roof, and that is full30.com, and no Lysol or Tampax commercials either. All right, guys, I'm gonna fire off another 30 rounds. Well, make that 29, and we'll talk to you guys soon. I can get that thing singing. Holy cow, that new trigger rocks.